This is the most important watch company you have never heard of. At its peak, it made more than half of every quality watch manufactured in the United States. Not a third, not a quarter, more than half. It builds its own private observatory staffed by professional astronomers to time its movements against the stars. It trains its own craftsmen at its own college. 14,418 jewelers carry its watches across America, and then it makes one decision, and in 20 years, it is gone. This is the story of Elgin, and it starts with a derelict farm in Illinois. In the spring of 1864, as the Civil War draws toward its final chapter, a group of Chicago businessmen decide that if Massachusetts can build a world-class watch factory, Illinois can too. They incorporate the National Watch Company, raise $100,000 in capital, and go to the young city of Elgin, 35 miles north of Chicago on the Fox River, telling the city they need 35 acres of land donated for a factory. The city selects a derelict farm. The owners refuse to sell unless the entire 71-acre property changes hands. 4 local businessmen buy it themselves and donate the required land. That is how much the city of Elgin wants this factory. The building goes up in 1866, steam-powered, built on a river, and operating from its first day on a philosophy nobody in watchmaking has tried before. Before Elgin, a watch is made by one craftsman, start to finish, by hand. A movement can take months. When it needs repair, you find a man skilled enough to fabricate replacement parts from raw material. There is no other way. Elgin throws all of that out. They build on standardized, interchangeable parts. Mechanized, repeatable processes. Organized quality control across the entire floor. A customer takes an Elgin to any jeweler in the country and finds a drop-in replacement on the shelf. No craftsman required. The watch is high quality, built at scale, priced so that an ordinary working American can own one. That combination has never existed before. By 1874, the name Elgin has become so synonymous with the product that the company renames itself the Elgin National Watch Company. The product has outrun the branding. By 1888, the factory produces 7,500 movements every single week. By 1907, Elgin holds nearly a third of the entire American watch market. The peak arrives in the 1920s. The main plant on National Street covers more than 13 acres under a single roof. Trainloads of raw material roll in: iron ore, gold, brass, leather, rubber, oil. Everything the factory needs comes in through one end. Finished watches come out the other. The engineers inside make the machines that make the machines that make the watches, from the most basic materials, all under one roof. Walk through the Elgin plant on National Street on a Wednesday morning in 1924. It does not feel like a factory. It feels like a small city taught to run in one direction. The smell hits you first, cutting oil from the precision lathes, warm brass coming off the finishing benches. The dry heat of a movement room where 4,500 people, more than half of them women, work in conditions of almost surgical cleanliness because a single grain of dust in the wrong place ruins a movement that has taken weeks to assemble. The noise is not the noise of heavy industry, it is finer than that. The tick and whisper of calibration instruments, the soft percussion of assembly benches, a floor supervisor who can tell you which bench a mistimed movement came from just by listening to it run. In 1910, rather than trust anyone else's time standard, Elgin builds its own private observatory 2 blocks from the factory. Professional astronomers measure sidereal time by tracking stars through a telescope. That signal broadcasts to every clock in the factory. Every movement that leaves the building is timed against it. The advertisements carry a simple line: "Time to the stars." It is not marketing, it is literally true. In 1920, Elgin opens its own watchmakers' college, training craftsmen specifically in Elgin methods. By 1928, it produces more than half of all watches manufactured in America. The name embeds so deeply into the culture that the Delta bluesman Robert Johnson records a song in 1936 singing about a woman with Elgin movements from her head down to her toes. Everybody knows what it means. Then the Second World War arrives, and Elgin does something that looks, at the time, like the honorable thing, something that will cost it everything. Elgin is a patriotic company in the most literal sense. When the government orders the American watch industry to halt civilian production, Elgin complies immediately. The factory on National Street converts overnight, producing military watches, Navy chronometers, artillery fuses, aircraft altimeters, sapphire bearings for cannon aiming. Elgin receives 10 Army-Navy E awards for fulfilling contracts ahead of schedule. The men and women on that floor believe in what they are doing. The Swiss believe in something else entirely. Switzerland has been neutral since 1505. While Elgin's floor runs munitions, Swiss watchmakers keep their lines running. While American soldiers in Europe reach for a watch and find a Swiss movement on their wrist, they carry that preference home. While Elgin fulfills shell fuse contracts ahead of schedule, Switzerland captures the American civilian market, and nobody stops them. By the time the war ends, Switzerland holds 95% of the American watch market and a monopoly on the machinery needed to make watches. The equipment Elgin has worn out producing war materials needs replacing. The Swiss factories will only lease them new machines. The Union president, Walter Cenerazzo, sees it coming while the war is still running. In May 1942, he stands before a congressional committee and tells them plainly, the American government asked its watchworkers to set down their civilian tools to build weapons, while the Swiss ship watches into the American market at landing costs below what it costs Elgin to produce them domestically. Congress imposes modest tariffs, nowhere near enough to level a field that is already tilted irreversibly. After the war, Elgin lays off 300 workers and moves to a 4-day week. Dividend payments stop in 1957. The private observatory is donated to a local school district in 1960 because the company can no longer justify running it. The building that once broadcast precision time to every corner of the factory is handed over to children. The master clocks go silent. This is the moment the decision is made. Facing equipment it cannot replace, margins it cannot hold, and Swiss competition it cannot restrain, Elgin's management chooses to import Swiss movements, finish and label them in Illinois, and sell them as Elgin watches. From a balance sheet in the mid-1950s, it looks rational. Why rebuild American production capacity when you can buy Swiss movements more cheaply than you can make your own? Here's what that decision actually does. It severs the connection between the name and the thing the name stands for. For 90 years, an Elgin watch means a movement designed in Illinois, machined in Illinois, timed against the stars in Illinois, by craftsmen trained at a college Elgin built for that purpose. The name carries that entire chain. The moment the chain breaks, the name becomes a label on someone else's product. Labels have no weight. Labels do not survive. The diversification that follows is the confirmation of a company that has stopped believing in itself. Elgin begins making decorator clocks, transistor radios, and wedding rings. The factory that produced the most precise, affordable timepiece in the world turns out novelty goods. In 1958, the Lincoln, Nebraska plant closes. In 1963, main operations relocate to a small South Carolina town so eager for the association it renames itself Elgin, South Carolina. The original Illinois factory shutters in 1964. In October 1966, the clock tower that stood over the complex for nearly a century comes down. By 1968, American production ceases entirely. The name is sold. The name that inspired a blues recording, that appears in Mark Twain's illustrations, that a city renamed itself after, that an NBA Hall of Famer carries to this day because his parents believed it stood for something. That name passes from company to company until it ends up on watches manufactured in China with no engineering connection whatsoever to the company that built 60 million movements in a century. The observatory is a school planetarium now. The factory is a strip mall. There is nothing on that site that remembers what stood there. What is genuinely painful about this, going back through the production records and the union testimony, is the precision of what is lost. These are craftsmen who spent their careers learning to do something almost nobody else on Earth could do, bringing a precision instrument out of raw materials at a price an American worker could afford. That skill is real. It is on the floor of that building on National Street. And the institution that owns them decides, sometime in the early 1950s, that the skill is no longer worth preserving. Stand on the site of the old factory in Elgin, Illinois today. The car park is empty on weekday mornings. Close your eyes. Hear the calibration instruments on the precision floor. Smell the cutting oil and warm brass coming off the finishing bench. Picture the astronomers 2 blocks east, measuring stars to calibrate a clock that keeps every watch in the building honest. A craftsman in 1928, sliding a finished movement into its case, knowing 14,000 jewelers across the country are waiting for it. Open your eyes. There's a car park. We did not lose Elgin to the Swiss. The Swiss made better use of the opening the war created. That part was not Elgin's fault. What was Elgin's fault was the decision to stop being what it was. The moment they put a Swiss movement behind an American label, the name begins to die. Not because customers know immediately, but because the thing the name stands for has been quietly emptied out. You can survive competition. You can adapt to a changing market. What you cannot survive is deciding that the thing you do best is no longer worth doing. Subscribe to the channel and like the video. There is a lot more coming.